There comes a moment in life when everything still looks normal from the outside, but inside, something feels quietly broken. You wake up, you breathe, you move through the day, yet nothing truly touches you. The world continues its noise, but meaning feels distant, almost forgotten. You do not feel dramatic pain, just a slow emptiness, like a candle burning without warmth. Marcus Aurelius knew this feeling well. He ruled an empire, commanded armies, and still wrote to himself that life can feel heavy, confusing, and strangely hollow. His honesty is what makes him powerful. He did not pretend that purpose always comes naturally. He understood that sometimes meaning must be built deliberately. Imagine a Roman emperor sitting alone at night, not in luxury but in thought. The world expects strength from him, certainty, direction. Yet his private writings reveal a man questioning why he must rise again tomorrow. He reminds himself that getting out of bed is not heroic because it feels good, but because it is his duty as a human being. This is where Marcus begins, not with motivation but with responsibility. When life feels pointless, he does not ask, "What do I feel like doing today?" He asks, "What does my nature require of me?" Modern life tells you that meaning comes from excitement, success, or passion. Marcus Aurelius would disagree. He believed that meaning comes from alignment, from living according to reason and virtue, even when emotions offer no reward. He writes that you were born to work together with others, to contribute, to act justly. Purpose is not something you discover like a hidden treasure. It is something you practice like discipline. Even on days when the heart feels empty, action still matters. Think about how dangerous it is to wait for life to feel meaningful before you live well. Marcus warns against this trap. He tells himself that the mind has the power to make life bearable or unbearable, meaningful or empty. External events do not steal purpose. Your judgment about them does. When life feels pointless, it is not proof that life has no meaning. It is proof that your perspective is tired, wounded, or overwhelmed. Marcus Aurelius did not romanticize despair. He acknowledged it, then refused to obey it. He wrote that you should not expect perfect clarity before acting. You act because action itself restores clarity. A person who continues to behave with integrity even while feeling empty is stronger than one who feels inspired but does nothing. This is the quiet courage Marcus admired, not loud confidence but steady commitment. There is a powerful idea Marcus repeats again and again. You do not control whether life feels meaningful, but you do control whether you live honorably. And living honorably is never pointless. When you help someone without applause, when you remain patient while misunderstood, when you continue working even when no one notices, you are fulfilling your role in the universe. Meaning is not an emotion, it is a consequence. When life feels pointless, the mind often drifts toward escape, distraction, pleasure, numbness. Marcus would gently warn you here. He believed that escaping reality weakens the soul. Instead, he advised returning to simple truths. You are alive now. This moment is yours. You can choose to act with reason. You can choose not to make your suffering worse by complaining internally. Even this choice is meaningful. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself of impermanence, not to depress himself but to sharpen his focus. He knew that feeling lost today does not define your entire life. He knew that emotions pass like weather. When life feels pointless, he would say, "Remember that this feeling too is temporary. What is not temporary is your character. That is what you are building every day, whether you notice it or not." Living well, according to Marcus, is not about feeling fulfilled all the time. It is about refusing to betray your values even when fulfillment disappears. This is why his philosophy speaks so deeply to moments of emptiness. It does not promise happiness, it promises dignity, and dignity, once earned, creates a quiet form of meaning that does not depend on mood. If life feels pointless right now, Marcus Aurelius would not tell you to find a passion or chase happiness. He would tell you to stand up, do the next right thing, and trust that meaning follows action, not the other way around. He would tell you that even now, especially now, your life is asking something of you, and this is where living well truly begins. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that when life feels empty, The mistake is not the feeling itself, but the story you tell yourself about that feeling. The mind has a habit of turning exhaustion into conclusions. You feel tired, so you conclude that everything is meaningless. You feel disconnected, so you conclude that life has nothing left to offer. Marcus trained himself to interrupt this habit. He reminded himself that feelings are impressions, not verdicts. They arrive uninvited, stay for a while, and then leave. Your responsibility is not to obey them blindly. He believed that much of human suffering comes from wanting reality to be different instead of learning how to stand firmly within it. When you say life is pointless, what you often mean is that life is not matching your expectations. Marcus would gently challenge you here. He would say that nature never promised comfort, excitement, or constant purpose. It promised existence, change, and responsibility. When you accept this fully, the sense of betrayal fades, and something steadier takes its place. Marcus Aurelius often wrote to himself as if he were waking from a fog. He would say, "Remember who you are. Remember what you are here for." Not in a grand, mystical sense, but in a practical one. You are here to act with reason. You are here to respond, not react. You are here to meet each moment with honesty. Even when life feels empty, these principles still apply. And that is precisely why life is never truly empty. There is a dangerous illusion that creeps in during moments of meaninglessness. The belief that if something feels pointless, it must be pointless. Marcus rejected this completely. He knew that value does not depend on emotion. A soldier on a cold battlefield does not feel inspired, yet his presence still matters. A parent caring for a child at night may feel exhausted, yet their actions are full of meaning. Feeling nothing does not erase significance. Marcus Aurelius believed deeply in the power of daily conduct. He did not seek meaning in rare moments of joy, but in how he treated ordinary hours. He reminded himself that you do not need a grand purpose to live well today. You only need to act in accordance with reason right now. Speak truthfully. Do your work carefully. Treat others fairly. This is not a small life. This is a disciplined one. When life feels pointless, the mind often tries to escape into the future. It says things will matter later, when something changes. Marcus warned against this too. He believed that postponing life is a form of quiet self-betrayal. He wrote that the present is all you truly possess, not tomorrow, not the version of yourself you hope to become, just this moment and how you choose to inhabit it. There is a profound calm in Marcus Aurelius's acceptance of limitation. He did not expect himself to feel strong all the time. He expected himself to remain principled. This distinction changes everything. Strength comes and goes. Clarity comes and goes. But character can remain stable if you choose it daily. And character, for Marcus, was the deepest form of meaning available to a human being. He also understood loneliness in a way that feels modern, surrounded by people, yet inwardly isolated. His solution was not withdrawal, but contribution. He believed that humans are designed to serve something beyond themselves. When you stop asking what life owes you and start asking what life asks of you, the emptiness begins to loosen its grip. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that even despair can be used well, not by indulging it, but by learning from it. Despair reveals where your expectations were unrealistic. It reveals where you attached meaning to things outside your control. In this way, even emptiness becomes a teacher, not an enemy. Living well when life feels pointless is not about forcing optimism. It is about refusing to abandon your role as a rational, ethical being. Marcus lived with plague, war, betrayal, and constant uncertainty. Yet he did not conclude that life was meaningless. He concluded that meaning must be practiced more carefully in difficult times. This is not an easy path. Marcus never said it was. But it is a stable one, and stability, when everything else feels hollow, becomes its own quiet purpose. Marcus Aurelius would ask you to look closely at what you call a pointless life. Is it truly life that feels empty, or is it the noise you have wrapped around it? He believed that much of our despair comes not from reality itself, but from the endless commentary of the mind. The mind compares, judges, anticipates, and replays. When it never rests, meaning slowly erodes. Marcus trained himself to return to simplicity, aga, in and again. He reminded himself that you do not need your life to feel significant on a cosmic scale. You only need to live it correctly. This idea is deeply unsettling to modern thinking, which constantly asks to be special, to be noticed, to matter in extraordinary ways. Marcus rejected this craving. He believed that craving importance is a source of misery. When you release the need to be exceptional, you become free to be useful, and usefulness is never empty. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on nature, not romantically but realistically. Trees do not ask if their existence matters. Rivers do not question their direction. They simply follow their nature. Marcus believed humans suffer because they resist theirs. Your nature is to think, to choose, to act with intention. When you abandon this and wait for life to excite you, emptiness grows. When you return to it, even quietly, meaning begins to reappear. There is a subtle strength in Marcus's acceptance of repetition. Many people feel life is pointless because days feel the same. He saw repetition differently. He believed that repetition is the testing ground of character. Can you be patient again? Can you be honest again? Can you be disciplined again? Meaning is not created by novelty, but by consistency. Marcus Aurelius warned himself against dramatic despair, not because pain is invalid, but because exaggeration clouds judgment. He would write reminders like, "This is not unbearable, this is not eternal, this is not who you are." He understood that the mind, when tired, tells stories that feel true but are not. Learning to speak back to your own thoughts is a core Stoic skill. When life feels pointless, the temptation is to withdraw, to shrink, to become passive. Marcus believed this was the worst response. He insisted that a human being is meant to be engaged, not constantly stimulated but involved, VD in work, involved in relationships, involved in improvement. Withdrawal feeds emptiness. Engagement weakens it. He also made a powerful distinction between pain and harm. Pain is often unavoidable. Harm, however, comes from how you respond. Feeling empty is painful. Allowing emptiness to turn you bitter, cruel, or careless is harm. Marcus urged himself not to let internal struggles deform his character. This is a crucial insight. You may not control how you feel, but you control what kind of person you remain. Marcus Aurelius believed that meaning emerges when you stop asking life to entertain you. He saw entertainment as a shallow substitute for fulfillment. Instead, he focused on mastery of self. Each moment offered a chance to practice restraint, fairness, courage, or humility. These practices do not always feel rewarding, but they create a deep internal order. And order, for Marcus, was the foundation of a meaningful life. He would also remind you that feeling lost does not make you broken. It makes you human. Even he, with all his power and wisdom, felt uncertain and weary. His writings were not instructions from a perfect man, but reflections from a struggling one. This is why his words endure. They do not deny emptiness. They teach you how to live with dignity inside it. Living well when life feels pointless requires a shift in focus, from chasing meaning to embodying it, from demanding clarity to practicing virtue. Marcus believed that if you live rightly long enough, meaning will eventually catch up to you, quietly, without announcement. And when it does, you may barely notice it at first, but you will feel steadier, more rooted, less desperate. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that one of the greatest sources of emptiness is the belief that life must feel a certain way in order to be worth living. This belief quietly pressures the mind. When joy fades, when excitement disappears, when purpose feels distant, the mind concludes that something has gone wrong. Marcus rejected this expectation completely. He believed that life's value does not depend on how it feels, but on how it is lived. He often reminded himself that the soul grows strongest in moments of resistance, not comfort. When everything feels aligned, character is not tested, but when life feels heavy and directionless, every choice matters more. This is when living well becomes an act of quiet defiance. Marcus saw this as a form of inner strength, continuing to act rightly when there is no emotional reward. Marcus Aurelius warned himself not to confuse numbness with truth. Feeling empty does not reveal reality. It reveals fatigue. The soul, like the body, grows tired. And just as you would not judge life while sick with fever, Marcus believed you should not judge life while exhausted in spirit. He urged patience with oneself, not indulgence but understanding. One of his most powerful practices was returning to the present moment. He believed that despair feeds on abstraction, thoughts about the entire future, the entire past, the meaning of everything. These thoughts overwhelm the mind. Marcus narrowed his focus deliberately. What is required of me right now? Not later, not forever. Just now. This question grounds you when everything else feels vague and empty. Marcus Aurelius also understood how easily comparison destroys meaning. Looking at others, their success, their happiness, their clarity, creates a false standard. He reminded himself that every person walks a different path shaped by different circumstances. Measuring your life against someone else's highlight only deepens dissatisfaction. Meaning is personal, not competitive. When life feels pointless, Marcus would encourage you to examine your attachments, not in a harsh way, but honestly. A. Are you attached to recognition, to outcomes, to control? He believed that attachment to things beyond your control guarantees disappointment. Freedom comes from investing your energy only in what belongs to you, your thoughts, your choices, your actions. He also believed that serving others restores meaning faster than self-analysis. When the mind turns inward too long, it becomes distorted. Marcus urged outward action, small acts of fairness, quiet help, simple cooperation, not because it fixes everything, but because it reconnects you to your human role. You are not meant to exist only inside your own thoughts. Marcus Aurelius did not believe that a meaningful life must be impressive. He believed it must be sincere. Sincerity in effort, sincerity in conduct, sincerity in facing hardship without pretending it is easy. When you stop performing for an imaginary audience, life becomes simpler, and simplicity makes space for meaning to breathe again. He also reminded himself that life is short, not to induce panic, but to sharpen intention. When you remember that time is limited, you stop waiting for perfect conditions. You stop delaying virtue. You act now, even imperfectly. This urgency is not stressful, it is clarifying. Living well when life feels pointless is about refusing to let emptiness decide who you become. Marcus believed that every moment gives you a choice, to become bitter or patient, to become careless or disciplined, to give up or continue with quiet resolve. These choices define your life more than any feeling ever could, and slowly, without forcing it, you may notice something shift, not excitement, not sudden joy, but a sense of steadiness, a sense that even if life feels unclear, you are standing correctly within it. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that one of the most overlooked causes of emptiness is resistance to reality. Not loud rebellion, be you. Subtle refusal. Wishing things were different. Replaying how life should have unfolded. Comparing what is with what could have been. This silent resistance drains meaning from the present. Marcus believed acceptance was not surrender, but alignment. He practiced reminding himself that everything happening now is part of a larger order, even if that order is not emotionally satisfying. This did not make him passive, it made him focused. When you stop fighting what you cannot change, energy returns to what you can, and where energy flows, meaning begins to form again. Marcus Aurelius often spoke about the danger of self-pity, not because suffering is shameful, but because self-pity locks the mind in helplessness. He warned himself not to speak internally as a victim. He believed that how you narrate your own life shapes how you experience it. When life feels pointless, the story you tell yourself can either deepen despair or preserve dignity. He believed deeply in voluntary effort, choosing to do what is difficult when it is not demanded, waking early, working carefully, speaking gently. These acts seem small, but Marcus saw them as acts of self-respect. They remind you that you are still capable, still disciplined, still alive in a meaningful way. Marcus Aurelius also reflected on how much suffering comes from wanting certainty, wanting to know where life is going, wanting guarantees that effort will be rewarded. He accepted uncertainty as a permanent condition. Meaning, for him, was not found in knowing the outcome, but in choosing to act well without knowing it. When life feels pointless, boredom often replaces pain, a dullness that makes everything feel grey. Marcus believed boredom was a sign of disconnection from purpose, not a lack of opportunities. He would tell you that even the smallest task can be done with excellence. And excellence, when practiced sincerely, reawakens attention. He also believed that discipline creates freedom, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom from being ruled by moods. When you train yourself to act regardless of how you feel, you become stable. And stability, in a chaotic world, is a rare and meaningful achievement. Marcus Aurelius would remind you that you are not obligated to find life meaningful in the way others describe it. Your role is not to chase someone else's definition of fulfillment. Your role is to live in accordance with your nature as a rational, ethical being. This quiet alignment produces a form of meaning that does not depend on excitement or approval. He often warned himself not to waste time arguing internally about whether life is good or bad. Life simply is. The question is how you respond to it. Arguing drains energy, responding builds character. And character, for Marcus, was the only lasting possession. Living well when life feels pointless means choosing structure over chaos, principle over impulse, effort over escape. Marcus did not believe this path would make you constantly happy. He believed it would make you strong enough to endure emptiness without being destroyed by it. And over time, endurance itself becomes meaningful, not because it feels good, but because it proves that you are still standing, still choosing, still becoming. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that when life feels pointless, it is often because the mind has narrowed its vision. Everything becomes about personal satisfaction, personal success, personal clarity. When these are missing, life feels empty. Marcus deliberately widened his view. He reminded himself that he was a small part of a much larger whole, and this perspective softened despair. He believed that humans are made for cooperation. Isolation, even mental isolation, erodes meaning. When you live only inside your own thoughts, they become distorted. Marcus urged himself to rejoin the world through contribution, not grand gestures but honest participation, doing your share, carrying your weight, helping where you can. This reconnects you to purpose naturally. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how easily the mind dramatizes suffering. He trained himself to strip events of emotional exaggeration, not to deny pain but to see it clearly. He would say, "This is uncomfortable, not unbearable. This is difficult, not meaningless." Precision in thought protects you from despair. He also believed that many people feel life is pointless because they expect it to constantly stimulate them. When stimulation fades, they feel lost. Marcus rejected this expectation. He believed peace comes not from stimulation but from order. A well-ordered mind does not require constant excitement to feel grounded. Marcus Aurelius placed great importance on self-governance. He believed that being ruled by impulses, cravings, and moods creates inner chaos. When inner chaos grows, meaning collapses. Living well, even in emptiness, means reclaiming authority over your responses. You may not choose how you feel, but you can choose how you behave. He often reminded himself that doing good is enough. You do not need applause. You do not need recognition. The act itself completes the cycle. When you detach goodness from reward, you free yourself from disappointment, and in that freedom, meaning quietly settles. Marcus Aurelius also warned against intellectualizing despair. Constantly analyzing why life feels empty can become another form of avoidance. He believed action was the remedy. Simple, honest action. Clean your space. Do your work carefully. Speak truthfully. These acts ground you when thought becomes overwhelming. He believed that patience is one of the most misunderstood virtues, not passive waiting, but steady endurance. When life feels pointless, patience keeps you from making destructive decisions. It buys you time, and time allows perspective to return. Marcus also accepted that some seasons of life feel barren. He did not see this as failure. He saw it as part of the natural rhythm of existence. Growth does not always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like survival. And survival, when done with integrity, is meaningful. Living well during emptiness means refusing to let your inner state justify careless behavior. Marcus believed that hardship reveals who you are becoming. If you remain fair, disciplined, and thoughtful when life feels hollow, you are living philosophically. And this way of living does not promise excitement. It promises steadiness. It promises that even when meaning feels absent, your life is still aligned with something deeper than emotion. Marcus Aurelius would remind you that one of the quiet reasons life feels pointless is because we confuse meaning with intensity. When emotions run high, we feel alive. When they settle, we assume something is missing. Marcus did not trust intensity, he trusted consistency. A steady life, lived according to reason, was far more valuable to him than a dramatic one. He believed that inner peace is not the absence of struggle, but the absence of inner conflict. When you stop arguing with reality, when you stop demanding that life feel different, tension dissolves. Meaning does not arrive as excitement. It arrives as coherence. Your thoughts, actions, and values begin to align. Marcus Aurelius often spoke to himself about humility, not as self-degradation, but as clarity. You are not the center of the universe. And this realization, rather than making life feel small, actually relieves pressure. You no longer need life to revolve around your happiness to justify its existence. You can simply participate in it. He also warned against the illusion of control. Wanting to control outcomes, people, or circumstances creates constant frustration. Marcus believed freedom comes from focusing only on what belongs to you, your judgments, your intentions, your conduct. When your energy stays here, life becomes manageable again. When life feels pointless, impatience often takes over. You want answers now. You want change now. Marcus practiced long vision. He reminded himself that life unfolds slowly and that rushing clarity leads to error. Patience is not stagnation. It is trust in process without surrendering effort. Marcus Aurelius also believed that gratitude is a discipline, not a mood. He trained himself to notice what is still intact. Breath, thought, the ability to choose. These are not small things. When you acknowledge them, emptiness loses some of its power. He believed that many people suffer because they expect life to reward them for effort. Marcus rejected this expectation. He believed effort is its own reward. Acting rightly is complete in itself. When you release the demand for external validation, meaning becomes self-sustaining. Marcus also reminded himself that nothing meaningful is built quickly. Character takes time. Stability takes time. Clarity takes time. When life feels pointless, it may simply mean you're in the middle of becoming something you cannot yet see. Living well, even in emptiness, means continuing to refine yourself, sharpening judgment, strengthening restraint, practicing fairness. These qualities accumulate quietly. One day, you realize you are no longer as lost as you once were. Marcus Aurelius did not offer hope as a feeling. He offered it as a practice. If you live in a way that respects your nature, hope becomes unnecessary. You are already doing what matters. And when you reach this understanding, life may still feel difficult, but it will no longer feel empty in the same way. There is weight to your actions now, and weight creates meaning. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that a life does not become meaningful all at once. Meaning is not a revelation, it is a result. A slow accumulation of correct choices made when no one is watching. When life feels pointless, the mistake is expecting a dramatic shift. Marcus believed transformation happens quietly, almost invisibly. He often reminded himself that complaining internally is a form of resistance. Not because pain is wrong, but because constant mental protest weakens resolve. He trained himself to meet difficulty with calm acknowledgement. This is happening. This is what is required now. This attitude does not remove hardship, but it preserves strength. Marcus Aurelius believed that many people lose meaning because they chase explanations instead of embodiment. They want to understand life before living it. Marcus reversed this. Live well first. Understanding will follow. Clarity grows from action, not endless reflection. He also warned against over-identifying with thoughts. Just because the mind says life is pointless does not mean it is true. Marcus treated thoughts like passing visitors. A thought arrives. You examine it. You decide whether it deserves authority. Most do not. This practice alone protects you from sinking too deeply into despair. When life feels pointless, the temptation is to reduce effort, to do the minimum. Marcus believed this quietly erodes the soul. Excellence, even in small things, keeps the spirit alert. Folding clothes carefully, speaking with intention, walking with awareness. These acts may seem insignificant, but they anchor you in presence. Marcus Aurelius also reflected deeply on mortality, not to frighten himself, but to clarify priorities. Knowing that life is temporary makes each moment more serious, not heavier, but more honest. When life feels pointless, remembering that time is limited can awaken a sense of responsibility toward how you live right now. He believed that humans are strongest when they accept their role without resentment. Every life includes struggle. Every path includes confusion. Marcus did not see this as injustice. He saw it as the cost of being human. Resentment adds nothing. Acceptance restores balance. Marcus Aurelius would also remind you that meaning is not lost forever. It retreats when the mind is overwhelmed. Like the sun behind clouds, it is still there. Your task is not to force it back, but to continue living as if it matters. This posture itself invites meaning to return. Living well when life feels pointless means refusing to collapse inward. It means staying upright, mentally and morally. Marcus believed that dignity in hardship is one of the highest human achievements, not because it is admired, but because it preserves inner order. And inner order, once established, becomes a quiet source of meaning. You may not feel inspired, you may not feel certain, but you will feel grounded. And being grounded is often enough to carry you through seasons of emptiness. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that one of the final illusions to release is the belief that meaning must always be felt to be real. He understood that the deepest forms of meaning are often silent. They do not announce themselves with emotion. They exist in how you carry yourself, how you respond under pressure, how you remain fair when it would be easier not to. He believed that life feels pointless when the soul becomes divided, when what you know is right and what you do are no longer aligned. This inner fracture drains energy and clarity. Reuniting thought and action restores stability. Even small acts of alignment rebuild meaning piece by piece. Marcus Aurelius also believed that suffering becomes unbearable only when it feels wasted. When pain is endured with bitterness, it corrodes. When pain is endured with discipline, it strengthens. This does not make suffering good, but it makes it useful, and usefulness gives pain a place within life. He often reminded himself that you are not required to enjoy everything you endure. You are only required to endure it well. This single idea removes enormous pressure. You stop demanding emotional comfort from every experience. You focus instead on conduct, and conduct is always within reach. When life feels pointless, many people search for answers outside themselves, new philosophies, new identities, new distractions. Marcus looked inward, not to indulge emotion, but to examine judgment. What am I adding to this moment that does not belong here? Often, meaninglessness is not caused by events, but by the interpretations layered onto them. Marcus Aurelius believed deeply in self-respect, not pride, but quiet self-trust. Acting in ways that allow you to respect yourself, even on difficult days, preserves inner dignity. And dignity, once preserved, becomes a stable foundation when everything else feels uncertain. He also accepted that some questions have no immediate answers. Why am I here? Where is this going? What is the point? Marcus did not obsess over these. He believed that living rightly was itself an answer, even if no explanation ever arrived. Living well when life feels pointless requires faith of a particular kind. Not faith that things will improve, but faith that acting with integrity matters regardless. This is a mature form of faith. It does not depend on outcomes. Marcus Aurelius would tell you that if you continue to show up honestly, meaning will eventually return in subtle ways. A sense of steadiness, a reduction in inner conflict, a feeling that you are no longer at war with life. He would also remind you that you are allowed to feel weary. Weariness does not disqualify you from living well. It simply means you are human. What matters is that weariness does not turn into abandonment of principle. At this stage, something important has shifted. You may still feel unsure, you may still feel empty at times, but you are no longer lost in the same way. You are oriented, you know how to stand even without answers. And this orientation is itself a form of meaning, quiet, uncelebrated, but real. Marcus Aurelius would want you to understand one final truth. A meaningful life is not one free from emptiness, but one that is not ruled by it. Emptiness may visit, doubt may linger, direction may blur, but none of these get to decide how you live unless you surrender authority to them. He believed that the highest form of human strength is quiet persistence, not dramatic breakthroughs, not constant motivation, but the steady refusal to abandon one's values. When life feels pointless, persistence becomes philosophy in action. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that every day is a complete life in miniature. You wake, you act, you respond, you rest. You do not need your entire existence to make sense. You only need today to be lived correctly. This perspective shrinks despair into something manageable. He also believed that peace comes from agreement with yourself. When your actions reflect your principles, the soul settles, even if the world remains chaotic, even if answers never arrive. Inner agreement creates a form of meaning that does not depend on circumstance. Marcus would tell you that living well is not a performance. No audience is required. No recognition is expected. The reward is internal order. And internal order, once achieved, becomes a quiet companion through all of life's uncertainty. When life feels pointless, remember this. You are still capable of choosing patience over anger, discipline over escape, thoughtfulness over neglect. These choices matter, not because they change the world immediately, but because they shape who you are becoming. Marcus Aurelius did not promise happiness. He promised steadiness. He promised that if you live according to reason and virtue, you will not feel at war with yourself. And not being at war with yourself is one of the deepest forms of peace available to a human being. So live well. Not because life always feels meaningful, but because living well is meaningful in itself.